Hello and welcome back to our YouTube channel, everyone. Today I'm going to make a trio of cards, but for the first card, I'm going to make this one using our Haute wedding dress stamp set and our Anemone border cling stamp. What I'm going to do with this border stamp is I'm going to white heat emboss it onto some watercolor paper. After I've embossed it, I'm going to watercolor it, and then I'm going to split the border into two to create two cards. And then with that second card, I actually end up making a third card using the leftover pieces. So let's get on with this first video. After I've embossed this beautiful anemone border image onto some watercolor paper, I'm going to start watercoloring with some Ken Oliver Color Burst powders. I have this pre-made palette that I created using a watercolor palette that I ordered from Amazon. I will make sure to link it in the description box below. For my brushes, I'm using a fine tip water brush and also a medium tip water brush. I'm using my fine tip brush to pick up the color burst pigment, and then I use the larger tip brush to blend the pigment out. And for today, I'll be doing some wet and wet watercoloring. So what that is, I'm adding pigment onto wet watercolor paper. So the surface is wet when I apply that pigment on there. So this way I get a really nice blend. For my color burst, I'm using two hues for the anemone petals. I'm using Peony color burst, and then I'll be using Wisteria color burst to add a little bit of shading. So once I've gotten my first layer of Peony on there, I'm going to add a little bit of Wisteria to the inner portions of my petal to add some of that shading. And you can see that I've wet the area of this large anemone first with clean water with that larger tip brush, and then I applied bits of peony pigment into the inner portions of the anemone petals. After I've laid down that first layer of peony color, I added some wisteria to the inner portions of the petal using another fine tip brush, and then I'll take my large tip brush to blend some of that color out towards the edges of the petal. Once I finish coloring in all of my anemones, I'm going to go ahead and add some greenery around the anemones. Now we have foliage around the entire border, and I'm not going to go and individually paint each leaf and cluster just because some of the leaves are very small, and for me it's a little bit more time consuming and not a big deal if we go outside the lines. If you go outside the lines, I feel like it gives the work a bit more of an artistic result at the end. So for the greenery, I use a combination of sap green and Naples yellow. Once I finish with that surrounding border areas for the foliage, I just added some black to the centers of my anemone. And when you add those bits of dark black to your project, it makes the other areas of your card that much brighter because you have that contrast. So I've set my panel aside to dry, and then I'm going to take the coordinating die to cut out the inner negative portion of my anemone border image. Before you apply any kind of tape to hold your die down, you want to make sure that your panel is completely dry. Otherwise, when you peel off that tape, it's going to peel off some of your work. So be sure that your work is totally dry. So once I've ran the die through my die cutting machine and I've taken off that die, I'm just going to cut my border in two. This way, I have two pieces to work with. You could just make, one card using the entire border, but for today, I wanted to cut this into two to make two different cards. And this is actually a technique that I learned from one of our customers, Michelle Murray. She's extremely, extremely talented, and I really love this technique. So I thank Michelle for creating this technique where she just cut the border into two to easily make two cards. So once I finished with my border, I just stamped our Haute wedding dress stamp onto some regular cardstock using our Caviar Hybrid Ink, which is copic friendly because I'll be coloring in this gorgeous lady with copic markers. I'm going to put down a layer of RV10 onto the dress. I colored in this brighter pink onto the top and bottom portions of the dress. Then I'm going to take my V0000, that's only 4 zeros, it's rose quartz, and I'm going to blend some of that RV10 out. And I want the dress to be a little bit of a brighter pink because I am going to white heat emboss some of those tiny floral details that come with the stamp set. So I'm just going back and forth between the RV10 and the rose quartz copic marker, but with the RV10, since this is the brighter pink, I am following the lines that are already stamped within the dress. And then I blend some of that color out with the lighter rose quartz marker. But for the front of the dress, you don't have a lot of lines in the front towards the bottom, so I kind of just create my own lines within the dress using the RV10. Both shades of pink are very light, so any way you kind of color this dress, it's going to be very forgiving. So once I'm finished coloring in this beautiful dress, I'm going to go ahead and color in her skin tone using a combination of E00 and then E34. I actually should have just applied the E34 right on there because I end up coloring in most of the skin tone using the E34 and then only a little bit of the E00 shows up. Next, I'm going to color in her hair using E49, which is dark bark. I usually add a sliver of white near this lady's bun to give a little bit of definition to her hair because I don't add any shading. I just use that one marker for her hair. So once I'm finished copic coloring, I'm going to stamp these floral details onto her dress. These are two separate stamps that come within the Haute wedding dress set. So I just white heat emboss these right onto the dress to create this lovely detail. Then I took the coordinating die and die cut this lady. While this die is sold out, this figure is very easy to fussy cut either by hand or you can use your electric cutting machine. Next, I'm going to white heat emboss our modern plaid stamp onto some regular white cardstock. And this modern plaid stamp is one of my favorite non-floral background stamps because it's so chic and it's so modern and it really goes with anything. So next I'm going to adhere my modern plaid panel onto a side folding A2 card base, and now I'm going to get ready to start assembling my card. I'm going to pop up one of those anemone border halves onto the right side of my card base. Then I'm going to trim off any of the excess pieces hanging off my base. Next I popped up my Haute wedding dress. But for the areas of the right side of the dress that go over the floral areas, I added a double layer of foam tape and then a single layer of foam tape on the left side of the dress because I want my Haute wedding dress figure to be a little bit more popped up than the anemone border portion of the card. Next, I stamped the Best Wishes sentiment onto white cardstock, trimmed it, created a slanted edge at the end, and then I also created some silver ribbed glitter paper, which is going to go behind that stamped sentiment. I also added a narrow black strip behind all those layers. So basically I have 3 layers for my sentiment strips, which I attached to the modern plaid panel with a tiny attacher or basically it's a small stapler. Once I got my sentiment onto my card, I just finished off the card by adding some of our glass slipper sequins. And I actually don't do it on camera, but I added some of our beautiful butterflies 3 to this card. As I mentioned earlier, I made 2 other cards after this one, and I added the butterflies to those cards, and I thought it would be a good idea to add them here as well because it just gives the project a little bit more life and movement. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out the next 2 videos as all 3 cards are kind of a set because they all go together. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel because I update it on a weekly basis. I'll see you at the next video. Bye!